Good afternoon, everyone. I am Carrie Duke with Teaching with Primary Sources, MTSU, and today really excited to share with you guys a new activity that we have up on our website. And to introduce this, I am going to talk with the person who created that, and that is our current graduate assistant, Abby Highcade. So Abby, thank you for joining us today. So Abby, why don't you tell us a little bit about the primary source that you chose for this close reading exercise?
Yes, so for this close reading exercise, I chose a World War I era poem titled Dulce et decorum est, and it was written by Wilfred Owen in 1918, but it was not published until 1921, a few years after his death. I chose to create the close reading exercise of this poem because of its powerful message. To quote the old line, Dulce et decorum est pro patria more. To translate, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. I love this poem because of this message and how Owen describes the reality of war rather than the fantasy of war, where soldiers were drafted and sent out to fight, thinking they're going to receive the glory, the honor that comes with being a soldier and serving their country. So I would like to share with you guys some of the what this close reading exercise provides. So let me share my screen.
And Abby, while you're bringing that up, I know several of our close reading exercises that we've created over the last few years are structured a little differently depending on, again, what the source is and what that looks like. So as you're showing us, be sure to talk to us a little bit about how you have constructed this one.
Yes, so on our first page here is just a little bit of background. I cover a little background of Wilfred Owen, the author, and how he tragically died only a week before the end of the war on Armistice Day. He died on November 4th, 1918. And it gives a little bit more background what where his poems went, how they were structured, mostly like how his style of poems were written, and then how his poems are an excellent example of protest poetry. I will get to that in a second when I get to the third page. And then a little bit more background on poetry during World War I in general. And then at the bottom here, I have some links. So for resources for students, there's a worksheet that Teaching with Primary Sources has called Thinking About Poems as Historical Artifacts. For teachers here, I have a biography of Wilfred Owen from the Wilfred Owen Association. And then the Library of Congress has more World War I poetry for more examples. Our second page here is very decorative, as you can see.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the color coding there that I see?
Yeah, so the color coding is nothing in particular. I just kind of like went down the line here with all the colors, but what is important here is that I cover both symbolism and historical terms that students may or may not be familiar with. Most of this is very like, you know, simple what's the word, figurative language here. We know bent double, like old beggars under sacks. That kind of tells you something how they're feeling. But so up here up top we just have Dulce et decorum est. I translated it, simple is sweet and fitting. A particular line, historically speaking, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Some people may not know what lime means. So over here I have in blue, lime is a poisonous gas, chemical gas known as phosgene, and it was used to choke enemies if inhaled. So that's just another example. And then for symbolism, some students may get a little confused on this part. It says, like, in all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. Over here in this gray blue, Owen is describing how when he finally does sleep, in all his dreams, he only sees his comrade painfully dying over and over, which is, you know, really, really sad. It like really tells the reader like, oh, this is not honor and glory that they are experiencing at all. It's tragic and horrific and just something unimaginable. And then at the bottom here, again, I have, you know, Dulce et decorum est pro patria more. I said that quote earlier, and it's simply translated at the side here.
So is there a line here in the poem that really kind of stands out to you?
I have a few favorites actually, but I do enjoy Like I do love the last line here, just how he just like closes it all together. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country, that old lie, because you just read all the horrific experiences that Owen went through, and then to see the old lie, it is kind of crazy. It's like, he's right. But another favorite of mine is the one right above it. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory. And that's, following right until he says the old lie. And to the side here, he says, again, Owen addresses to the reader. He's talking to us. But here he asks them to spare innocent tongues and children from the promise of desperate glory, and do not teach them of war with high zest. I think that's just like so powerful.
So how do you envision a teacher might use this activity in their classroom?
How I envision this, it would go down to the third page here. So I know that teachers can use this poem for both English classes and history classes. I do provide symbolism and provide some detailed work in the symbolism. And I also pointed out historical terms or that students may not be familiar with. But particularly in history classes, how this close reading exercise fits into the curriculum, it can be used to represent soldiers' lives during World War I, especially describing like trench warfare and new weapons and technology used during the war, such as, gas attacks. And yeah, so this third page here, just real quick, I do have questions to ask before reading. Just simple observations that students can make, like what kind of source is this? The primary source, poem written during World War I. When was it published? It tells you here on the left who's the author and what does the Latin title mean? Is Dulce et decorum est? And then a few little other questions after reading. And they can also fill out the thinking about poems as historical artifacts. I provide that link there. And a couple of other extra questions. What kind of poem is this? That, like I said, is a example of protest poetry. And it reveals like the horrible reality of war and says those horrors against the way that's so often glorified. And there were people and soldiers who protested against the war. And this is an example of that. There's some other specific topics. So long periods of sleep, surprise gas attacks. It's all those horrific details that Owen describes in his poem. And then what does the last line of the stanza mean? Well, Dulce et decorum est, do pro patria more. And then what does that mean? That students need to read over the poem again and really take in what the message is.
Well, thank you, Abby. This looks like such a great close reading exercise that a teacher can bring into their teaching of World War I, or again, said great in an English classroom as well. If you are interested in finding this close reading exercise, you can find it on our website, which is at www.mtsu.edu/TPS. And if you look over there on the tools, on the sidebar on the left, you'll see a tools drop down, and then all of our close reading exercises are listed there on that page. They're all listed in chronological order, so you can definitely find this as you scroll down the page. And you'll find lots of other close reading exercises that we've created over the last few years. So we definitely invite you all to check that out. And of course, be sure specifically to check out this great one that Abby has just created for us. Thank you.
Thank you.